Hey guys, Jared Transformational Coaching. Action is transformation. Sounds weirder and weirder the more that I say that. In this video, what I wanted to get into was, can you be okay with your partner's messiness and the shadow aspects of being in relationship? This was really a big thing for me that I had to learn, but it's also something that I'm seeing more and more come up within relationships with individuals, with some of my clients, with some of my friends and family. And I'm really seeing the importance and necessity in relationship to hold it, to be able to hold space for other people, their shadow aspects, but also for you to ask from another person for them to hold space for your shadow aspects, and the importance of that in building healthy relationship. So in this video, this is what we're going to get into. First off, I'm going to share with you why that's important to building intimacy. Secondly, I'm going to share with you why people don't do it. And then thirdly, I'll finally share with you why when you do it, you'll feel better and you'll feel more connected to yourself and life and feel like you can accomplish more in the world. So let's get into it. So why do you need to be able to hold safe space for another person in relationship? Well, first off, everyone needs a witness, and we need witnesses when our shadow and our dark stuff is coming up to the surface. In fact, when our dark stuff or the shadow comes up to the surface and we want it to be witnessed, that's the very key indicator that there needs to be some sort of awareness or consciousness shed on that. So any shadow aspects of your being, and everyone has a shadow aspect. I have shadow aspect. I mean, everyone in the world, if you're living in the world and you're a human being, I don't care if you've spent millions of years meditating, you have shadow aspects. It's just a part of being human, and it never ends. I used to think like, oh, I needed to do all the inner work and the healing work to uncover all the unconsciousness within my being and the shadows within my being. And the reality of it is if you're living in the world, there's always going to be shadow aspects. That's just how it works. If your light isn't turned on, there's darkness. If your light is turned on fully, you're going to see that there's darkness outside the periphery of the light. And so when it comes to relationship, one of the most important things that we can do in order to create deeper intimacy and a deeper connection to the other person is to hold safe space for them when their shadow comes up, is to hold safe space for the challenges or the issues that they're really having. Now, that being said, this is what I hear a lot, and I hear this from my clients. I used to have this belief for quite some time where they say, well, I don't want to hold space for my partner, but then not them have them reciprocate, because then it would just be a draining relationship. Well, if that's the reality of your relationship, if you're putting yourself out there, you're really giving light to their shadow, and you're holding safe space for them when they're hurting and when their shadow's coming up, you need to have that reciprocated as well too. And you need to voice what it is that you need or what it is that you're looking for. I can't tell you how many relationships I was in where I was afraid to share my shadow with the other person because I didn't want to leave them or lose them. I see this a lot with avoidant personality types. I see it a lot with anxious avoidant personality types. The point that I'm making is it's so important to share your shadow aspect with another person, and also ask if they have the capacity and the capability to hold your shadow aspects, because they might not. And when I coach individuals around relationships, sometimes I get this all the time. They'll say, well, I'm giving so much of myself, but it's not being reciprocated. And the first thing that I ask is, well, do they have the capacity to hold safe space for your shadow like you are for them? And do they have the capability to hold safe space for your shadow like you are for them? And if the answer is no to those questions, then it's time to get out of that relationship, pure and simple. Or it's time to communicate, hey, I really need you to show up in this way. And then if they can't, then they can't. Then it's time to get out of the relationship. So it's really important to allow our shadow aspects to be seen, and to really ask ourselves, does my partner, does the person that I'm connecting with in the relationship have the ability, the capacity, the capability to hold safe space for everything that's transpiring right now? That's an incredibly important facet of having a healthy, successful relationship. Now, that being said, if they don't have that capacity, or that, hey, Wu Wei, good to see you. If they don't have that capacity or they don't have that capability, then it's time to get out of the relationship, because then you're only going to drown yourself in it. Now, for those individuals out there who are saying, well, I have the capacity and the capability to hold space for my partner, but they never seem to reciprocate it, here's what's happening. You're energetically draining yourself, and it's not worth it. What you want to do is share your shadow with your partner. Make sure that they have the capability and capacity to hold space for your shadow. And at the same time, do the same for them, and they do the same for you. And this creates this awesome energetic, I don't know if a trifecta is the right word. It creates this awesome energetic stabilization where you have one individual who's leaning on you, but you're also leaning on them. So your shadows are actually leaning up against each other like this. And if you notice that when you have, it's like if you put a board here and a board here and you allow them to lean up against each other like this, there's not a lot of weight there. It just feels really nice. It feels good. There's not too much trouble. You're both leaning up against each other, but it's not exhausting because you're both holding each other up. And that's what we want to do with our shadows. We want to ask our partner, the person we're in a relationship with, hey, I got these shadow aspects that come up, and I really need you to hold safe space for them when they do come up. Can you do that for me? And they say, cool, yep, I can do it for you. And then they do the same for you. And the great thing about it is your shadow aspects actually hold each other up in the relationship. Now, if they don't have the capacity to hold safe space for you when you're being triggered or when you're hurting, then this is what happens. Excuse me. You are their center, and they lean into you, and then you feel exhausted because they're only leaning into you. So if this is you and you're their center and they don't have the capacity to hold safe space for you, then what happens is they lean into you and they're going to push you, and that's going to feel exhausting. You're going to feel like you're holding them up like this, like, oh, I got to hold them up. This is exhausting. So it doesn't work. What does work is when you find someone who has the same or similar shot or a similar capacity to hold those shadow aspects for you and you for them. Then what happens is both of your shadow aspects lean up against each other like this, and it's not draining or exhausting to anyone. In fact, it feels really great. It's like, oh yeah, I have this darkness, this messiness within me. You have your own darkness and messiness within you, and we can hold each other up in a really great, safe way where it's not exhausting for either of us. That's the type of relationship that you want to create for yourself and have. Anything else other than that is just going to be exhausting or draining. If you're holding safe space for someone else and they're not reciprocating it, then it's quote unquote a narcissistic relationship. And if you're having safe space held up for you and no one else is helping you, well, then that is you being quote unquote a narcissist. So the most successful, healthy relationships, they lean up against each other like that. You're both holding each other's weight, helping each other hold each other's weight, but you're leaning up against each other as such. Does that make sense, you guys? So that's what we want to be doing. We want to be holding one another up in that way so we don't feel exhausted and tired. They can lean on us, we can lean on them, and create life in that way. Beautiful. Now, what happens when you're able to lean up on against each other like this? You're able to create more in the world. You're able to feel relaxed. You're able to feel rested. You'll know that you'll have a safe space to lean up against. And what that will do is that will allow you to do more in the world. You'll feel a sense of ease. You'll feel like you can kind of just glide through everything because you're being supported. Energetically, someone's leaning on you, and you can feel yourself leaning up against them, and you're creating a perfect balance between each other. And that allows you to hold more space for what you want to accomplish and do out there in the world. So if you're feeling like you're in a relationship where you're being drained or it's not working out, then ask yourself, what type of relationship would allow me to feel safe? What type of relationship would allow me to share my shadow? And how can I do that for another person? And how can I create that for myself? Don't be afraid to ask for safe space. Don't be afraid to ask for a person to witness when your shadow comes up. When you do that and you reciprocate that, you create a balanced relationship where you're holding one another up. And because of that, you're able to do more out there in the world. Does that make sense, everyone? Everyone tracking on this? Beautiful. I love it. Nicole says this will be done this weekend. I love it. That's all I got for this time. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys. Quick video here. Be looking out for some more of the interviews. If you haven't yet, sign up for the Sacred Relationship series down below. We are on the last week, and you'll get access to all those interviews and all that other good stuff. Other than that, that's all I got. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys, and I will see you soon. Have a great night.